Universities have the unenviable job of preparing students for jobs that do not yet even exist. Of course, there will always be certain professions. Medical doctors, for example, aren't likely to fall out of demand anytime soon, but the training required to be a good doctor is very likely to change dramatically. It's likely that decision making, for example, in the future will be aided by machine learning. Therefore, highly skilled workers should be adept at data science, or at least adept at the interpretation of data science results. Having said that, it's also likely that the employee of the future should excel at interpersonal skills and relations. Social skills may be at a premium because of the sheer amount of time that we spend in front of computer screens and interacting with each other via social media. Therefore, the most in-demand employees in the future will be technically competent, socially intelligent, and creative problem solvers. The key question we'll be considering in this lecture is how universities can instill these traits in their graduates. Are you ready to do this? All right, let's do it then. What should I study? Well, I obviously can't answer this question for you. The answer to this question should ultimately depend on your unique abilities and your personal interests. What I can say is that you should not study a particular topic if you're not motivated by it. Regardless of what you choose to study, there are some universal skills that you will need to be successful in the labor market. For starters, you'll need to be a good problem solver. This means developing creative and efficient solutions to problems, much like an engineer is expected to do. This doesn't mean that you must study engineering, but you should leave university with an enhanced ability to think like an engineer. You should also be adept at teamworking, which is why you cannot focus entirely on building your technical skills. Most jobs require collaboration with others, and the social skills needed to do this are in decline for a variety of reasons, not least of which is the increased hours that we spend communicating online. Employees who can read and respond appropriately to others' emotions will be very much in demand. Should we abandon arts and humanities degrees because they don't build technical skills? I personally think that this would be a mistake, although others may obviously disagree with me. As I said before, the most important skill to develop is creative problem solving. You can certainly improve this skill studying engineering, but you can also improve this skill studying philosophy or history for that matter. Moreover, it could be argued that communication skills are even better developed in the arts or humanities degrees than they would be in the natural sciences or the STEM degrees. At the same time, a parochial focus on developing good communication skills at the expense of good technical skills is also not a great idea. Ideally, I think a broad liberal arts education where students learn some philosophy, language, natural and social science, and even art is likely to produce the best jobs-ready graduates, but that's just my view. The truth is that aside from the professions like law and medicine, very little of the content that you'll learn at university will be useful to you after you graduate. What will be useful are the skills you develop to solve problems and learn new things. Are you saying that a university degree is only valuable insofar as it leads to a job? Well, not necessarily, although we shouldn't be naive either. Work is very important to the human race. It gives us meaning and purpose in our lives. Without work, we make little to no contribution to society. But I'm defining work broadly here. An artist still works. I see work as the act of creation. Whether you choose to create art or wealth or knowledge or well-being or products or services, you should aim to create something. Therefore, Whatever you study should enable creation as well. Unfortunately, the labor market will only accommodate so many artists or bankers or engineers. Thus, we can't always study exactly what we want to study. We need to make sure that the skills we develop are useful skills to others. Some skills are more or less useful, and some will become more or less useful as society and the economy evolve. So in the end, our educational pursuits should lend themselves to employment, but not necessarily paid employment. But that doesn't mean that we can't or shouldn't learn for the sake of learning. As I said, the very process of learning is even more important than the content of what you actually learn. What will university education look like in the future? Well, that's a difficult question to answer. For the last couple of decades, some have argued that university education will inevitably transition from face-to-face instruction to online instruction. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 appears to have hastened this transition. Many of the world's top universities are not offering are now offering lectures online. Personally, I think that university education will depend on some element of face-to-face interaction in the future, whether through traditional lectures or through blended learning, where lectures are listened to online, but students still meet face-to-face for seminars and tutorials. Fully online programs, to deliver value, will need to include ample opportunities for work-integrated learning. If I were a betting man, I'd say that large lecture halls are a thing of the past, or at least will be very soon, regardless of whether or not we are in a pandemic. The key skills that students will need, for example, creative problem solving and team working, are best developed in applied hands-on tutorials than in very large lecture theaters. But again, that's just my view. What about assessments? How will those change? Well, I think this is the key challenge facing universities. Assessments to date have largely focused on evaluating how successful a student has absorbed the content of a course. But as I said before, the content of what you learn is much less important than the very process of learning. You will likely forget most of what you learned during your degree programs, but you will not forget how you learned and how you processed and summarized complex information. That's the key, really. But how can we assess a process and not an outcome? How can we offer a credential that says this person is a creative problem solver, or this person can work effectively to motivate a team? Perhaps assessment should not be in the hands of academics. Perhaps instead, assessment should be in the hands of employers or stakeholders external to the university. I think assessment is currently the most significant weakness of higher education because it does not typically measure what's important and instead focuses on rote learning and memorization. What about the future of postgraduate degrees? Good question. It is increasingly the case that an undergraduate degree simply isn't enough to realize a graduate's career aspirations anymore. As more and more people get bachelor's degrees, they become increasingly taken for granted by employers. If you don't have one, you will be ruled out from most of the top jobs, but if you do have one, it may not be enough to secure the very top jobs that you want. In order to stand apart from all the other job applicants, you may need to get a specialist master's degree these days to demonstrate competencies in the right skills. I think that this trend is likely to continue, and this isn't a bad thing. It may even be the case that someday you may need 2 or even 3 master's degrees to secure the most desirable jobs. It's possible that even PhDs will become more common in the future in order to demonstrate the highest level of technical competence in a particular skill, although we are not at this point just yet. Today, a PhD will likely overqualify you for most jobs, apart from those in academia. Will everyone need a university degree in the future? No, of course not. Although it will greatly increase your chances of gainful employment and make you a better, more informed citizen, a university degree is not necessary. In fact, for some individuals, it would only hold them back. There are certain types of people that will succeed literally no matter what they do. Think of the Elon Musks or the Bill Gates of this world. Think of the visionaries like Steve Jobs. Some people will literally move mountains to get what they want. A university education will just delay their greatness by a few years. By the same token, a university degree isn't for everyone. Some people are better off getting a vocational qualification and becoming a tradesperson. Not everyone needs to go to university, and I think it's misguided social policy for government to assume that this is the case. Just like a university degree doesn't guarantee success, lack of a university degree does not prohibit success. Everyone needs to find their own path in life, and universities can be important enablers. What advice would you give your own children when it comes to skills development? Well, that's a great question on which to end this lecture. In fact, I've had these exact same discussions with my own kids. I want them to go to university because I think it will add significant value to their working lives. Yes, work isn't the sole criterion by which success should be judged. It is one of many. But I'd like to see them have fulfilling jobs that challenge them and interest them, just like my job does to me. I want them to study what they're passionate about, but at the same time, I need them to understand that their greatest passions might not offer the opportunities that they hope for. We live in the real world, and this world is full of constraints and restrictions, like it or not. Would I stop my children from studying medieval history? No, absolutely not. As I said before, history could be instructive and useful in developing problem-solving skills. But would I rather my children study engineering or medicine? I'd have to say, honestly, yes. This is Professor Andrew R. Timming, signing out.